Somewhere in what is now the Badlands of Montana, a fossilized skull sits half buried in rock for 66 million years. When paleontologists finally free it from the stone, they find something they did not expect. Not a monster, not a mindless killing machine, but evidence of a brain far stranger, far more capable, and far more alien than anyone imagined. What was it actually like to be inside that skull? To see through those eyes, to hear the world the way that creature heard it? That question, what it felt like to experience the world as a dinosaur, is one paleontology has only recently dared to ask seriously. For most of the 20th century, dinosaurs were treated as little more than reptilian props, cold-blooded, dim-witted, doomed. That version of the story is dead, and what has replaced it is far more astonishing. Over the next several minutes, we are going to travel through fossil evidence, brain scans, sensory reconstructions, and decades of scientific debate to answer one deceptively simple question: what did it actually feel like to be a dinosaur? And I promise you, by the end, at least one of these discoveries will change the way you picture these animals forever. Let's start with the brain itself, because that is where this story truly begins. For decades, scientists could only guess at dinosaur intelligence by comparing skull size to body size, a crude measure called the encephalization quotient. By that measure, most dinosaurs looked unimpressive, closer to modern reptiles than to birds or mammals. But that measurement was hiding something. Skull size tells you almost nothing about how a brain is organized, and organization, it turns out, matters more than raw size. Modern CT scanning changed everything. Researchers can now build digital endocasts, three-dimensional models of the empty space where a brain once sat, without damaging a single fossil. And what these endocasts reveal is a story of specialization, not simplicity. Take the tyrannosaurs. Their olfactory bulbs, the brain regions dedicated to smell, were enormous, some of the largest relative to brain size ever measured in a land animal. Some researchers have proposed that certain tyrannosaurids may have had a sense of smell rivaling modern vultures, capable of detecting carrion or prey from remarkable distances. This is still debated. Brain region size correlates with capability, but it is not a perfect predictor. Yet the anatomical evidence is striking enough that few scientists dismiss it outright. Now compare that to the raptors, the dromaeosaurs, cousins of Velociraptor. Their story is written in the inner ear, specifically in a fluid-filled structure called the semicircular canals, which control balance and coordinate rapid head and eye movements. Studies on dromaeosaur endocasts show enlarged canals associated with tracking fast-moving objects, a feature also seen in modern hawks and falcons. This suggests something remarkable. These animals may have processed motion and depth with a speed and precision closer to a bird of prey than to any reptile alive today. Which raises an unsettling thought. If a velociraptor's eyes and inner ear worked anything like a hawk's, then to that animal, the world may have moved differently than it does for us. Faster, sharper, more urgent. We are not just looking at a different creature. We may be looking at a different experience of time itself. But intelligence is not just about processing speed. It is also about social complexity, and this is where the fossil record has delivered some of its most emotionally resonant discoveries. The nests were spaced with remarkable regularity, roughly one adult body length apart, suggesting organized colonial nesting behavior similar to modern seabird colonies. Fossilized juveniles found within the nests showed worn teeth and underdeveloped leg bones, evidence that these hatchlings were being fed by adults long after birth, unable yet to forage or flee on their own. This was not a cold-blooded animal abandoning its eggs to chance. This was sustained parental investment, the kind of behavior we associate with birds and mammals, not reptiles. And Mayasara is not alone. Fossilized trackways show herds of different ages moving together, smaller footprints sheltered within the protective ring of larger ones. Bone beds containing dozens or even hundreds of individuals, from Centrosaurus to Edmontosaurus, suggest that herding was not an occasional behavior, but a fundamental survival strategy for many species. So, if these animals lived in complex social groups, cared for their young, and processed sensory information in some cases as fast as modern predators, what exactly separated their minds from ours? Here is where the science gets genuinely contested. Some researchers, drawing on brain-to-body ratios and comparisons with modern crocodilians and birds, argue that even the smartest non-avian dinosaurs likely operated on instinct-heavy, pattern-based cognition, sophisticated but fundamentally different from primate-style problem-solving. Others point to trackway evidence of coordinated pack hunting, nesting colonies, and vocal communication structures as signs of a more flexible, even social intelligence that we are only beginning to appreciate. Neither camp claims certainty, and honestly, I find that refreshing. Paleontology at its best does not pretend to have all the answers. It shows its work, and it lets the fossils argue. Speaking of communication, this is one of the most surprising frontiers in dinosaur research, and it deserves a closer look. For years, scientists assumed dinosaurs communicated primarily through visual displays, crests, frills, color, posture, but the discovery of elaborate nasal passages in duck-billed dinosaurs like Parasaurolophus, with its long, hollow cranial crest, suggested something else entirely: sound. Computer models simulating airflow through that crest suggested it could have functioned like a natural trombone, producing deep, resonant calls, potentially audible for kilometers across the ancient floodplains. Imagine standing in a Cretaceous forest and hearing that sound roll across the landscape, not a roar, but something closer to a low, mournful horn calling across the treetops. We don't know exactly what these calls meant. Territorial warnings, mating calls, herd coordination, all three are plausible, and none has been definitively proven. But the anatomical evidence that dinosaurs were producing complex, directional sound is now hard to dispute. Now, for the theory I promised to save for later, because it is genuinely one of the most debated ideas in modern paleontology. It concerns Tyrannosaurus rex, and it involves something almost nobody expects: lips. For over a century, the reasoning is compelling. Exposed teeth in air dry out and wear unevenly, and the tooth enamel of large theropods shows patterns more consistent with moisture-preserving lip coverage. Not every researcher agrees. Some argue the skull anatomy of certain theropods makes full lip coverage anatomically difficult, but the lip hypothesis has gained significant traction and forced a genuine reconsideration of how these animals looked, and more subtly, how they may have behaved. A face capable of subtle muscular movement changes everything about potential expression, display, and even bite mechanics. Picture it. Not the snarling, tooth-bearing monster of decades of film, but something closer to a colossal, scaled predator with a closed, almost unnervingly calm face, until the moment it opened its jaws. That single anatomical detail forces us to rethink the emotional tone of an entire ecosystem. And this, I think, is the real lesson hidden in all of these discoveries. Every time we assume we have finally understood these animals, the fossil record hands us something that dismantles the picture and rebuilds it more strangely, more intelligently, more alive than before. Personally, I find it remarkable that an animal that vanished 66 million years ago can still force us to rethink everything we know about intelligence, communication, and even something as simple as what a face is supposed to do. The more I study these fossils, the more extraordinary these creatures become, not because they were monsters, but because they weren't. We still don't know exactly what it felt like to stand inside a Cretaceous forest and hear a Parasaurolophus call across the canopy, or to lock eyes with a Velociraptor processing your movement at a speed your own senses cannot fully imagine. Maybe we never will, completely. But every fossil, every scan, every tooth mark brings us one step closer to an answer. And if I'm honest, that unfinished quality is exactly what makes this field so addictive. The mystery is not a gap waiting to be embarrassed by future discovery. It is the entire point of the search. If you want to keep exploring these vanished minds with me, there is another creature waiting, one whose brain may be even stranger than anything we've covered today, hidden in a fossil discovery that rewrote what we thought we knew about prehistoric vision itself.
That story is coming next. Until then, stay curious about the past. It has far more left to tell us than we ever expected.